Alright, hello everybody. Welcome one, welcome all. To all the fans, friends, minor acquaintances, and haters. Today we'll be discussing the highly requested, fan requested Metropolis game. I have a little kind of outline to help me out. I know my last video was a little bit off the cuff and I just kind of talked and I didn't really know what I was saying, so I made a little script for me, so if you see me doing little reader eyes, I apologize. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. So, title of the video is Metropolis, Hyperreal Capitalism, Schizophrenia, and the Accursed Share. That is what this video is about. So, without further ado, let's go. Alright, part one. So, we're going to be talking about, I guess, capitalism at its limits and on the limits. This voracious rot and stagnation that we see in Metropolis. So, I think, for the players, it's very easy to see Metropolis is a city in decay. There's not really much going on. It's a kind of this dystopic kind of city where all we can really do is service industry things. Service industry consumption just for consumption's sake. So it is kind of a parodied and hyper, but very transcended version of capitalism, where we see, advertisements galore and just in your face, buy, spend. It's purely a society of consumption and consumption just to consume. It's not reproducing. It's barely able to reproduce itself and to maintain and stay afloat. Now, we'll discuss why, but, it's a society in which it can barely even reproduce itself, and so everything that it is producing is just replicant images of itself. What do I mean by that? So, I mean that Metropolis is basically only able to, the veneer of Metropolis is only able to sustain kind of this growth capitalism, service capitalism, where all that we can do is just, it's like banal spending, kind of spending spree, shopping mall kind of. It's a shopping mall city now, and that's all it is. It's not innovating, it's not moving forward in any way, any tangible way, it's not advancing. And you see, that's what this kind of, it's kind of almost a parody. I don't want to say parody, but it's a take on our own real world, where we're at a time period in our lives where how much is actually progressing. We as a society, since, let's say, 2016, how far have we actually come? Culturally, have we really advanced that much? No. So I'm trying to say is that I feel like we are in a stuck culture. So Metropolis mirrors that and is a stuck culture, stuck in this rabid, fervent, consumption society. And so, I forgot to mention this earlier, but so some philosophers and ideas we'll talk about can stem from Baudrillard, Deleuze, Freud, and Bataille, as well as Lovecraft. We're going to talk about Lovecraft stuff because that's heavily involved in what do you call it? The Metropolis shit that's going on. So, first off, we're going to talk about some Baljard stuff. So, the Metropolis game is kind of like this, the creation of simulacra and hyperreality. And it's kind of detailing this, I don't want to say the stages, but it kind of goes through different stages and progression to that hyperreality. So first off, I'll kind of go through those 4 different stages. We have kind of a reflection stage, in which I call it, where the sign Metropolis is a pure, healthy image of itself. So that would be probably, what we saw Metropolis as. I wouldn't even say we even saw it in Sam's game, but I would say Metropolis, as its pure, healthy image, was prior to the snake goddess Chiton attacking it in Sam's game. Well before my Metropolis game, when we ventured there for a few games, and we were plane hopping. So, that's kind of the quote unquote healthy image of Metropolis that we have. It's the referential image that we see as Metropolis. So it's like what we know as Metropolis, right? So moving forward, and usually this is kind of the stage I create my games in, is kind of this masked distortion of what we know. So with Rohirrim, it started with kind of this. We know Rohirrim's the hot desert and becomes the cold desert, and the fallout of that. It's a perverted image of itself, but the fundamental essence is very much the same. And you could say that you could maybe think that this is my Metropolis, but I wouldn't think so. I think we see that perversion, I guess. Well, you could say, yeah, that my Metropolis is this perverted image of Metropolis that we knew. So we already have a referential object, Metropolis, before. We have a new Metropolis, and we can tell that something's changed dramatically, but we're really not quite sure what, right? It's a reflected image, but something's off about it. And we have these distorted games that I do, like the Distorted Ozma, Wildwood Nights, where we have a referential object, the original game, and then the new game where things have changed in a post-Fallout, and where we kind of play with aspects of the old and stuff in the new. So the fundamental, a big change was that, between the pure healthy image and the mask distortion, is that the sign here, Metropolis, has come under attack by the goddess of nightmares. And so she failed, and wasn't able to fully, destroy Metropolis. But as my players would understand, there's no, what's the right wording to say? There are ramifications to this event, regardless of whether she succeeded or not. By the time my game starts, Chiton the Snake Goddess is already dead in other endeavors, right? However, her effect and her attack on Metropolis lingers in the continued psyche of it, and manifested by other nightmares springing. And so this is where we entered the 3rd stage of the creation of hyperreality of simulacra, and it's the kind of absence of the original image. So this is where we start bordering onto the actual events of Metropolis, right, themselves, things that are going on, and where what we know in this distorted image starts crumbling before our eyes, where things are happening where we're saying, whoa, what is going on with Metropolis? There's a lot going on. And so this absence of the original image is the limit breaker the breaking of the limits of the old reality. The order of sorcery is what this is called. And so, obviously, that's, for my players, that's referential to sorcery has taken hold and taken a foot in Metropolis. So what is that sorcery? The source of the sorcery, if you will, is the Mysterian Flux Key, or my Necronomicon. Nightmares have taken hold of Metropolis. So, keep that in mind. I know that was a lot of different jumble jangle of words, and, I apologize to, if I'm getting any concepts wrong. This is just my understanding of them. And so, I know there was a lot of jumble of jargon for some of y'all. However, I think if you've seen a lot of my videos, and you probably are starting to get the gist of it, of what I mean by the distortion and the pure image and yada yada yada, right? So think of just to wrap it up in a nice bow on this little tiny mini section. My Metropolis is a distorted Metropolis as the players see it as the game begins, right? And then going forward, as the players unveil the truth, it's not, I guess, seeing past the illusion, we realize, this is not Metropolis as we know it at all. Something far deeper and darker is going on beneath the surface. So, I would like to, bring it back to like capitalism and stuff like that, real quick before we move on, because we'll get to that kind of stuff more later, in regards to the order of sorcery and yada yada yada. But I wanted to talk about some aspects that are ubiquitous in New Metropolis. So we see desire, sexuality, stuff like that are very played up. They are very fundamental aspects of New Metropolis, or distorted Metropolis, if you will. And so, desire for what? Sexuality of what? Desire to be controlled. Desire for safety, for pleasure, and happiness. So this is kind of my commentary on like an inner fascism in capitalism, where, it's the citizens themselves who live now in Metropolis have a kind of unconscious desire to be repressed and to continue to live their life of comfort. And we can see that, it mirrors maybe, our American notions of, always wanting to safety, security, wealth, and stuff like that. Whereas, we have this high standard of living, quote unquote, here in America. Say quote unquote because, it's not the greatest, but, it's much better than in like third world countries and stuff like that. But we as Americans aren't able to fathom that level of poverty and stuff like that. And so whenever anything marginally affects our baseline idea of how wealthy we should be, it's really it disrupts us a lot, and we don't like the supply chain stuff. And like, I don't want to get too much into that, but it's basically, the point is, us, most, not say us, and not me, a lot of Americans get really uppity about that, the disruption of trade and stuff like that, as if, we're poor all of a sudden, but we're really not. So it's this inner fascism where we desire this order that maintains a baseline level of happiness, pleasures, and other items of consumption. A society of consumption is really what, we desire. And so that is what Metropolis is. Metropolis is a society of consumption and desire, totally. So this kind of gives Metropolis a kind of a city of sin feel, right? Where, all the vices are out and about, drug use and all this other kind of uses of capital and money, which aren't maybe considered taboo here in the modern on the modern day, but that stuff is in the full front and it's advertised and like a positive. I'm not trying to say those are bad things, but I'm just trying to say that it's just really putting it in the forefront to show that society is just for consumption purposes only. However, not necessarily just for consumption, because there's the hidden aspect in the order of sorcery that lies beneath the surface, right? So I was going to say, consequentially, even though we're in this society here in Metropolis, New Metropolis, that, can barely reproduce itself and sustain itself as a society, we have only one avenue in which actual creation is being made in Metropolis, and that is through desire, sexuality. Now, more on that later in a future section. However, we're going to bridge to our second section where we talk about schizophrenia. So, we see, this, we talked about the society and how it's this kind of baseline consumption society. And so now the people who can kind of see into the order of sorcery and to see beyond and to put themselves above, I guess, their consumptive desires are schizophrenics. And I don't mean to say, even in the real world, that everyone who is against capitalism is schizophrenic, but it's a schizophrenization process that goes on to be able to see, quote unquote, past the illusion. And I don't really want to say that this is an illusion, but finding the real baseline beneath it. So it's those who are on the limits, especially in Metropolis, who can kind of see the whole of the picture, right? So this is how we see people like Safe, the party, who are outsiders coming in, and the Lynchian trash hag, the scene from what's it called, Mulholland Drive. But interestingly, they meet these people early on who kind of, I would say they are both Safe and the trash hag are schizophrenics, like straight up. They say strange shit. They, do all the hallmarks of stereotypical schizophrenics, But Safe is kind of the main one because he kind of returns and mingles with the party more and more because he's this kind of gateway character for the characters to see the order of sorcery for what it is. Now, in this sense, Safe is crow-coded. He's a black, lizard man, kind of like a salamander. But he's crow-coded in the sense that my crow characters often serve as mediary between the base and the divine. So this is a common theme in a lot of my games, where crow characters are mediums or witch doctors of sorts who can communicate between these two realms or can see between these two realms. Maybe one eye is in each realm, right? And so Safe is crow-coded here in that he is like a crow, like a black angel, a messenger between reality as we see it and reality as it actually is. It's because Safe has seen it. He's seen the rot underneath the surface. He's seen the Lovecraftian menace that lingers underneath. Now, Safe, he's a drug addict. He's a whole bunch of different things. But, it's really interesting because only once Safe stops taking the drugs. At the parties, kind of, he kind of mentions how he doesn't really want to do it anymore, but the party really urges him to just quit it. The actual reality of the Order of Sorcery becomes more clear to him. So it almost becomes, did he subconsciously knew the real, and did he want to numb and blunt himself to it? Or was he being controlled to take these drugs or whatever, to not see the illusion? Now, here's where my commentary is. It's kind of where I think, Safe can represent a lot of the people in Metropolis, and I think a lot of the Metropolites maybe are subconsciously aware of society in decline, and so they turn to consumptive means to give them maybe baseline pleasure, to null the pain, null a distraction, a pleasant distraction. And that's kind of my commentary on capitalism today. We see that kind of same thing. We don't want to interrogate ourselves with the real order of sorcery. We will continue in our consumptive paradise and to not see past the veil. Now, so Safe, I guess, no longer doing that kind of stuff. It's this return to the repressed, right? Where all those memories flood back to him, and he becomes very depressed and very suicidal because he's seen very horrors beyond comprehension that the party is very soon to encounter. So this is where that Lovecraftian kind of menace, if you will, is lingering underneath the surface, right? So Metropolis, the gist is that Leor, the god of Metropolis, the god of the city, right, is dead. He's been dead for a long time now. And the city is barely staying afloat because of that. Because, the whole city of Metropolis is a whole plane that he has had power over and created. So the city continues without him. However, not in a great manner. So this is due to, I said that, the Chitin killed him, and we're just living in the fallout, the distorted reality and the Order of Sorcery. So, and there's Lovecraftian creatures that start showing their ugly faces through the players, see Shoggoths and other, I don't remember what the term is, hold on, there's some other one that starts with a Y. Yiths, that's right. So Daniel, there's the fake synth Daniel Burns, who's a Yith, and then there's Shoggoths and other hounds of Tindalos and other creatures of vice and horror who represent this sludgic kind of grossness to them. But they start rearing their ugly heads, and the players start becoming schizophrenics in themselves. Like, what is actually going on in Metropolis? Why are they here? What is going on? They start asking all these questions that lead them to the mentality that Safe had. So ironically, though, my Metropolis kind of subverts the classic Lovecraftian fiction. So usually, right, a lot of times in Lovecraftian fiction, it's the agents of cosmic horror, the Order of Sorcery, who seek to undermine society in some grand ritual to, bring back Cthulhu or, some Lovecraftian entity, right? To destroy, to, do whatever. However, in my Metropolis, it's a play on that where these agents of the Order of Sorcery aren't seeking to undermine society. They're actually what is sustaining society and keeping it from crumbling apart at the very seams. And so they aren't necessarily evil in that sense. They're gross and horrid and, nasty, but, they are sustaining this society, and I don't want to say who can blame them, but that is the role that they fill. And so the Mysterian Flux Key, which is my Necronomicon, is what is, controlling these agents. There's a, businessman, Mr. Kepler was his name in the game, Aster Godfrith, Daniel Burns, the writer, Synth Daniel Burns, and others who are kind of, in line with this book, that a book of horrors, the Lovecraftian fiction. So, and these active choices by these agents of the Mysterian Flux Key become revealed to the party in time that they're just doing the best they can do. That God, Leor, is dead, and the realm is going to die with him regardless. And the only thing that can be done is to create a new God in his place. And so now we return back to desire and sexuality. How are they trying to create a new God to keep Metropolis afloat? So, and then we transition to another idea, the Accursed Share. So, what is the Accursed Share? The Accursed Share is an idea from Bataille, Georges Bataille, about excess, surplus, and even luxury kind of, I don't want to say goods, because it doesn't mean just like, we have excess calculators, we have excess notebook cards and stuff like that. It just kind of means the excesses in general of society, the surplus and the excess and luxuries that we have. And the Accursed Share is something that is either to be wasted or to be sacrificed, because in form of ritual or something like that. We see this with like Aztecs, with surplus human life and blood and stuff like that, and they almost see these sacrifices, these festivals to this Accursed Share is used to maintain and to continue society forward. So, we see, think about modern capitalism, right? We see festivals, parties, and other sorts. Is it necessary to be doing these things? Think of it even on a baseline level, where sometimes we indulge in these excesses and luxuries and surplus just to keep our own vestiges going forward. So remember back when we're talking about the original, how Metropolis represents a society just for consumption's sake. That's what everybody's engaging in, this Accursed Share, to consume and waste this excess value so that it can still continue. And anyways, so how does this relate back to the Order of Sorcery of the Mysterian Flux Key and the malaligned Lovecraftian menace that the players are coming into contact with? I keep doing that, the finger quotes with menace, because are they really that bad? And it becomes a very philosophical kind of notion of maybe, maybe what they're doing isn't so horrid. It's disgusting. It's you could say, no, okay, hold on. I'm not gonna say it's not evil or bad, because it kind of is. It definitely is. But at the same time, those 8 billion metropolites are going to die. And it is only a matter of time unless something can replace them and transfigure them to keep them alive. And so, this is where we return back to what we talked about, the baseline stuff that is being wasted, right? Baseline consumptive, like food, the advertisements and all that stuff. Um, but um, the real accursed share of Metropolis is the motor, which we talked about previously, the motor in which all creation is possible, desire and sexuality. And so the agents of the Order of Sorcery, the Mysterian Flux Key, are very aware of this power. And so this is why in Metropolis there's a mass collection of bodily fluids and stuff like that. We won't get too much into it. And so, remember how I talked about how it's like revealed to the party that, the Lovecraftian menace is actually, sustaining society and not actually seeking to undermine society. This is what makes the reveal of Leor so impactful. So we come to that reveal of Leor. He's a husked god turned womb. They're drawing in all the sacrificial life essences of all 8 billion metropolites over the last 60 years, and the bodily fluids and stuff like that, through mass wirings and tubes and stuff like that. If you think about it, the wires and tubes kind of have an evocation of tentacles. Another Lovecraftian kind of nod. But honestly, this reveal is probably one of the most. You know what? I'll be honest. I think it was the most jaw-dropping moment in our D&D history, where I genuinely believe my party members were flabbergasted with, what they were seeing. I had an image. I'm not going to show it here because it's very gross. That I generated and created. It was just, flabbergasted, sheer horror and disgust, and just like it truly was an unimaginable moment in which you had to see it to even fathom, it's not even about to believe it, to even fathom it, you had to see it, and it was just like so shocking, right? And this is the party's ultimate encounter with the Order of Sorcery, where all the illusions that they might have had about Metropolis has crumbled apart at the seams, right? And the baby god springing forth from Leor, the womb of Leor, just further solidified that, shock factor. But like I was saying, this is when they become truly, totally schizophrenied, where they're becoming basically like safe. Their sanity, in Call of Cthulhu-ish way, their sanity has gone. They can't barely comprehend what's going on anymore. The images that they're seeing are just horrid and grotesque, and they start coming into conflict with one another over the future of said baby. And so, just to sum it up, in the gist of it, they reject the Order of Sorcery, dooming the newborn. In doing so, they doom the souls of 8 billion Metropolites and their home. So Metropolis starts falling apart at the seams. And this is where, we have this final transformation of, we talked about it earlier with the boundary are the 4 stages into hyperreality, into simulacra. Well, hyperreality and simulacra is kind of like, not necessarily that, I said the absence where, it's no longer reflective of the prior image that we have. The simulacra and hyperreality is that which bears no relation to any reality whatsoever. So now, when Victoria Morningstar, James's character, they slay the baby god and she becomes elevated to her own godhood, she reforms Metropolis into the gold clock tower, right? So this is that completion, or the light tower, that of those 4 stages, where her new divine plane, if you will, bears no resemblance of the previous reality before. So it is its own simulacra, or its own hyperreality, newly independent of this, thanks in part due to the Order of Sorcery. Now, I've tried to do Order of Sorcery before, in a sense, if you will, with the Ohala game. I think if we look back on it, you could definitely say that the last season is an Order of Sorcery, the fantasy, However, the players kind of reject it and return and recreate the image that they already knew. This is a subversion of the old image and making a new one entirely. So, I think Metropolis might be my peak fiction. It might be my best game I've done, just on pure horror factor and psychoticness alone. I think, like I said, I think it has, to me, the most memorable, final set piece, if you will. The Leor image is very harrowing, and I will not share it on YouTube because it is very disgusting. But I think that it's my peak fiction. I thought before that Ohala was, and I thought then that Rohirrim was better than my whole Ohala thing. But now I think my Metropolis thing is my best thing. I think it had its moments. Yeah. So this went by really fast, actually. So now I know what happens whenever I write freaking video agenda or a little script for me to kind of follow, because that was fast. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to share regarding Metropolis. Hopefully this kind of got your brain cells churning a little bit. Maybe it revealed some insight into how I made the game. Maybe it also, gives you ideas on how to make further creations of fiction and stuff like that. Be thinking of the philosophical underpins behind the game and behind stories, right? So, that's pretty much all I have to go over today. So, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed my yap session, because that's what this is. And, yeah, I'll go ahead and go. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and see ya.